Hi there, my name is Cupicate, and welcome to the next Wolf Talk with Cupi, or Cupi Wolf Talk. I still haven't decided what to call this, and I am taking suggestions in the comments below. Anyways, welcome back. This is the second Wolf Talk, but the first Wolf Talk since I've been back from Texas. And boy, Texas was a doozy. Not only did we drive there and drive back, which is a 12-hour trip with stops, both ways, but the 3 days that I was actually in Texas, it was nonstop go, go, go from the point that I woke up to the point that I got home where I was too tired to do anything. And so WolfQuest took a back seat, which was kind of a shame. I ended up bringing my tote board, the sketchbook that I have dedicated to the timeline with illustrations for our WolfQuest story and series, as well as my laptop where I could do Google Doc stuff. I even took screenshots and information down between stats and some little tidbit things that y'all have told me about the pups in Discord. Jotted all that down, had it ready to go before we even drove to Texas. Wasn't able to use any of it because I was so busy, which was such a shame. I was 100% prepared to work on this and I just did not have time. But the second that I got home, I knew the next day I could jump right into it, and I did. So that Monday, I worked pretty hard on making the timeline try and work out properly. It was not easy. I didn't do it based on seasons, so I'm a little concerned it may be incorrect. It's still a work in progress, but I have a timeline. Like I said, don't know if it's correct, and I would love if y'all go through it with me and realize if it's not correct, please let me know. So here's how it goes. It'll probably pop up on the screen here in a second if it's not already on the screen. The WolfQuest timeline is as follows. Year 1 is when Kiba got to Yellowstone. She's standing on the rock and she's about to go look for a mate. So the way the story is, Kiba got lost. I was visiting Yellowstone, she got lost, she ran off, and she decided she was going to live in the wild since she couldn't find her way home. That is how our story, our WolfQuest series started with Kiba's Kingdom. So her at age 2 is year 1. It was the fall of year 1 that she went off. She successfully hunted elk on her own, and she found Bane, a pure-blooded Casanova wolf. And they were the power couple that first fall into spring until they had their pups in year 2. So when you have pups in WolfQuest, as you most of you know, I would think, but for any of you that don't, you age up when you have puppies, because wolves in the wild typically have their pups at the end of April into early June. That's typically the time that pups are born. So even though my sweet girl was born in January, we're just gonna go off of the way that the years and the aging system happens in the game for that, except for the dying part at age 8. That's the only thing that we're not doing for Kiba. But she had her pups. She had Teo, Aspen, and Mikhail right as she turned 3. So that is the start of year 2, is when she had her puppies with Bane. So then we go on to the next spring where Kiba possibly would have had a second litter. I'm not saying that she did. We may not do that with her. I'm not entirely sure. I want to do it with her for Tower Fall, but if we do that, I might actually play her a little bit to get her into the later years of our timeline, because you're going to be amazed at how many years have passed in our WolfQuest series. So yes, at age 4, that's year 3, Teo, Aspen, and Mikhail are all yearlings. Now, Teo is not with Kiba at this point. Teo's actually with Seraph, but he's alive, so he is still a yearling. Then we move on to the following year, which is year 4, where the brothers are now 2. They're old enough to go off and disperse and find their own mate. And that's where we started the series Brothers Rivalry. So in that year, Aspen finds Charm, Mikhail finds Kirby. They spend that fall into early spring together until they will have their puppies in that spring. In that current year, Kiba turns 5. She's 5 at this point, which is insane, and possibly onto her 3rd litter in that year. Again, I don't know. That part of the story hasn't been written, so I can't tell you what's canon yet. I haven't decided, so we're just kind of leaving that door open to see where it may go later on. Then year 5 comes. That's when the spring happens. That's when the 3 brothers have their pups. So, including Teo, who's now with Sundance, which is really awesome. Even though that series is going on right now, it's happening simultaneously with Aspen and Mikhail's pups. So, with that, we know that Aspen, he dies in early summer. He doesn't make it because Crevice Lake takes his life because he has been aggressive towards them and he was trespassing in their territory. I still feel icky about that because, you know, I rewatched that episode many times and he was trying to, if I remember correctly, I think he was trying to carry an elk calf back to his pups and he was running away. And yet the Crevice Lake wolves, even though he was running, really wanted to kill him out of revenge for the death of their member. So, it's just so sad. It's so sad. I look back at that and I'm like, it makes sense for the Crevice Lake wolves to do it because of what he did, but it started a spiral of possible war in the future. But we don't want to get into that tangent. We did that in the last Cupi talk. So yes, Aspen passes before the end of summer, before official summer. So in that same year, year 5 is a really important year, Charm loses her pups to Crevice Lake as well. And even though Mikhail offers for her to stay with them, she has the urge to go and try again. Even through all of her pain and sorrow, she doesn't want to give up. She wants to try again. So in the same fall of that year is when she meets Caleb. So this is where the timeline got really confusing for me because it was essentially alternating litters, right? So then, in the following year, all of the pups that are left between Teo and Mikhail are yearlings. So like Agni-Kai and Zico, Dawn, Aurora, all of Storm, all of them, and then whoever survives in Teo's series, because we haven't finished that series yet and anything could happen, they are yearlings. And they're possibly going into another litter. I know for sure Teo will go into the next litter. So he will be having more pups with Sundance, assuming she survives. I'm hoping she will, in this year, which is really cool. And then Charm this is when she had her 7 puppies in this same year. So this was when the Phoenix Rising series really started, besides having found Caleb in the previous year, is when she had her pups, and that's year 6. And to just kind of give you how serious this is, at year 6, Kiba would be 7. So Kiba, who started it all in year 6, would be 7 years old. Then we go into year 7, and that is when the sisters for our A Tale of Two Sisters series would go out and find their mates. That's when Aurora found Aries and when Dawn found, I almost said Bane, Dusk. So that was year 7. Now, Charm's pups from the Phoenix Rising series are yearlings at this point, and she may be having another litter with Calum. And the brothers, Teo and Mikhail, are now age 5, and Kiba is age 8. And this is where I'm kind of splitting off from game rules, because you're supposed to, at age 8, go into Iron Wolf, regardless of whether that wolf was an Iron Wolf or not. And you can either choose to take a rest and pass in your sleep, or at random, something could happen. But I've also heard of people getting to age 9, which is crazy. I would love for that to happen. I still haven't gotten Seraph up to age 8, so there's no telling. But I'm gonna actually have her go to sleep and die in her sleep, rather than having a random death. I don't want her to get hit by an RV or something and me just like cry. Anyways. So Kiba, as far as her being age 8, because in the story she's a husky. Huskies have a longer lifespan. Actually, wolves in the wild can survive quite a long time. I think WolfQuest just decided to take the average lifespan of wild wolves, and they decided 8 was where they wanted to cut it off. But I looked it up, and wolves in the wild can live up to 13, and in captivity can live up to 16, from what I read. So they can live longer than 8. This is just where WolfQuest decided they wanted the wolves to stop, you know. They needed a cutoff time. It actually makes a lot of sense. Year 8 is when the sisters have their puppies, and they're age 3. Charm would be age 6 at this point. Her pups would have turned 2. So all of her pups from the Phoenix Rising series would be going off into Amethyst Mountain and looking for their mate. And that would be year 8 that would happen. Teo and Mikhail would be at age 6 at this point, assuming they both live, and Kiba would be age 9. Moving on into year 9, this is when the sisters' pups are yearlings. Now, as we know, Dawn passed in year 8. She did not make it. However, 4 out of her 6 pups did survive. They will still be yearlings. And I have decided that they would have been raised by their grandfather Mikhail for the most part, assuming he still lived. I'm going to say he did because for story purposes, this is how I want that to happen. I have a whole story in mind for Dusk and what he does after Dawn's passing. And we're going to talk about that today because a lot of the personalities that I'm going to write specifically for Dawn and possibly Aurora's pups will have a lot to do with Dusk and what he did after Dawn's passing, but we'll get back into that in a minute. All right, and then Charm is age 7 at this point. This would be when her pups would have their pups during this year. Both of the brothers are age 7 and Kiba is age 10. And then we get into year 10. Year 10 is the current year. So in this year, Aurora's pups and Dawn's pups and any pups from other litters that from Mikhail and all of them, but specifically Aurora's pups and Dawn's pups would be 2, and they would be ready to disperse and go find mates. So if this timeline is correct, if I did it correctly, we have had 10 years pass since the start of Kiba's kingdom. I did not think that legitimately until I sat down and did this timeline. I was like, oh, it's been like, what, 5 years? No. It's been 10 years, assuming I did this correctly. And I'm going to keep saying that because I may find out that I didn't. But at this point, Charm would be age 8. The brothers would be age 8. This would be the last year that they would be alive. If they had a litter to this point, this would be their last litter. And they'll be done. That's it. According to WolfQuest rules and how they usually do this, unless they miraculously survive to age 9, this will be their last year, their last potential litter. And then Kiba is age 11. Again, because Kiba is a husky, even in the story, we're going to say that she's still alive. Now, she may not be in Yellowstone still having litters, she may have found her way back home at this point, because Bane would not be alive anymore since he was a pure-blooded wolf. It is funny to think that all of these wolves down the line would have husky in them. I know we can't really do that in game, but I love that idea that they all have a little bit of husky in them. Right, Kiba? She's sleeping. She's sleeping. So that is our timeline for right now. And it's crazy as I look at Steigander over here that this is year 10. This is year 10. It's absolutely insane. So let's get on to how, in my mind, my headcanon of what would happen after, what will happen, what has happened after Dawn's passing. So a lot of the decisions that Dusk made in the few days before Dawn's murder, essentially, he was very selfish. I don't remember him always being selfish. If I remember the series correctly, he was very good at staying at the grass sites as they moved around and watching the pups while Dawn went off and did all the territory taking. You could say that that was lazy, but taking care of 6 pups by yourself is not easy, and Dusk did it without losing any pups until after Dawn had passed. They had honestly done really well together, and had that situation not happened with me kind of overstepping my bounds of watching the health bar, if I had been really more careful about that health bar, Dawn would probably still be alive. If I had been like, you know what, chasing this moose is not worth it, Dawn would probably still be alive. But the fact that the Crevice Lake wolves were right there is what really sealed the deal of my bad decisions. But her hunting the moose was really because Dusk had went and ate an entire moose calf by himself. So due to that, and the fact that he froze when they got attacked, is the reason that Dawn passed. And that's what I'm going to say. It wasn't that he didn't want to defend her or that he couldn't defend her. I think it was that they were ambushed, and in the chaos between the elk herd hunting the moose calf with the moose mom nearby and the fact that 2 Crevice Lake wolves ran in, that was a lot going on at once. I think he froze as they attacked her, and he was getting attacked and he didn't know what to do. In all that chaos, she fell and it was over. And so I've been going back and forth between thinking, you know, he was a bad parent or all of this. I think in the end, he definitely grew complacent. I don't know if he was always a bad parent, but in the end, he was pretty meh, because he had started making those bad decisions. But after talking with a couple community members, and we were all a little split on this, I kind of want to go down the path where Dusk blames himself. So he gets back to the pups without Dawn, and he essentially has to tell his babies and her babies that she's not coming home. And that's brutal. You know, that can definitely set you straight. If you're at a complacent point in your life, a tragedy like that wakes you up pretty quickly. And I think that's what happened to Dusk, is that was a wake up. And I genuinely think he blames himself, because he knows, well, if I hadn't been such a fatty and a glutton, I should say, because we don't want to do any accidental fat shaming here, because trust me, I'm the last person to do that. Don't worry. I am literally the last person to do that. But he was such a glutton that Dawn felt the need to go out and get more food. And he's smart enough to know, I did this. I started this. What I did caused this to get to this point. She would not have had to go out and hunt more if I hadn't been such a glutton. The pups wouldn't have been so hungry and eaten the other calf she'd gotten so quickly if I hadn't been such a glutton. So he blames himself. And so the kind of story that I have written for Dusk afterwards is that in order to make up for his mistake and losing his mate, who he loved, I genuinely believe he loved. Like, I'll never forget the picture that I took for the thumbnail where it looks like they're kissing. And so they were a king and a queen. They held each other up. They lifted each other up. It's just that he simply, it's almost like his ego got the better of him. His ego got inflated. They were doing so well. Things were so easy that he wasn't paying attention to Dawn, who was literally killing herself to make sure this family ate, to make sure their territory remained strong. And he ignored that because he's like, it'll all work out. He got complacent. That's the best word that I can use for what happened to Dusk. And so afterwards, I wanted him to do everything he could to make sure that his pups lived. He does so much for those pups that he nearly starves himself to death to make sure that they eat, because his gluttony is what got them into that situation. And so he eats after them, and if there's nothing left, he doesn't eat. And I talk about that a little bit in what I have wrote for Steigender. And I'm actually going to show you and read to you what I've written for him, which is the only real bio I've written yet. I've written a few like little snippets here and there for the other ones, the other pups, but Steigender was the big one. But his specifically has the most info on what happened with Dusk. And I will tell you, so this may be like a trigger warning. This is very tragic, right? This is very tragic. And I'm going to have to go into detail on some things that happen so that you're not reading this and going, that doesn't line up. Actually, thanks to a community member that I kind of talked to about these writings, because it's always nice to have another pair of eyes. And I really, I trust her to be honest with me. I honestly, I trust all of you guys. I really do. I really love hearing about what y'all think about this. And you may not like the way that I go with this, but this is how I want this to go. I'm saying this a lot. The ideas that I have for our story in the future show through in what I have done for Steigender. And there are other pups in particular that I have kind of picked out of the bunch that will also represent this plot, plan, whatever you call it, that I have for the future of our WolfQuest series. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the little Google Doc that I have. So as you can see, I only have Steigender. And again, thanks to that community member, and I'll go ahead and give you a shout out, but it's Night. If you guys see Night in the comments or ever in a chat, make sure you thank her, because she's helped me a lot with some of this, because I do get stuck and I'm just like, what do I do? Does this sound right? Does this sound icky? Does it sound like it doesn't make sense? And because of some of the things she said about this paragraph in particular has made me realize I need to explain some things, because it does have a personality plot hole and it has another semi-plot hole in it that I'm gonna explain, and I will probably write out. And believe it or not, even with the update, this does not all fit in the bio for your wolves and WolfQuest because I write too much. Okay. So we're going to go by this kind of sentence by sentence a little bit. So we have Steigender. I'm calling him the Wanderer. And I put Dawn's line because he's Dawn's spawn, essentially. And this is year 10, right? All right. So here we go. Steigender, the only surviving son of Dawn and Dusk, has lived far more sorrow, heartbreak, and rage than any other wolf should ever have to bear. So already this starts out a little dark, and I'll explain why when we're done. After the death of his mother, Stygander laid down with his sickly brother, Mallow, shivering and pleading for Dawn until the younger pup breathed his last breath. So as we know, Mallow was sick right before Dawn died. And because Dusk would have been on his own, having to hunt and do territory by himself, he would not have had enough time to spend with Mallow to make him better. And so that is the story that we have decided to go with for the reason why I rolled so low. So even though the dice decided it, there needs to be a story as to why they die. So that is what happened to Mallow. Stygander watched as his father, whose frame had shrunk down to skin over bone, offered every last bite of food to him and his siblings. So that goes into what I told you, where Dusk would realize his absolute mistake that cost him his mate's life and the pup's mother's life, and so he would choose to make sure the pups ate first always. But because he's by himself, he could only really get enough food for them. This is how Dusk has chosen to make up for his mistake, is by raising this family on his own and choosing a path that will redeem himself, essentially. He's trying to redeem himself by making sure this family survives, giving everything he can to his babies. He then witnessed his suffering father desperately try to persuade other female wolves to join him and share the load of 5 motherless puppies, but none trusted Dusk to protect them. So that also shows you that Dusk did try to go and get another mate to help him. He was desperate. He knew he couldn't do it alone anymore. But no female trusted him because they had either heard about what happened to Dawn, or they're looking at these pups thinking, where's their mom? Why don't they have a mom? Or maybe they didn't want that responsibility. And so nobody would join Dusk and be his mate to help raise these pups that weren't their own. So he ended up alone either way. Okay, and again, this is for trigger warning. This gets kind of dark right here. And there's a reason that I'm choosing to do this, so don't freak out. And I will, like I said, I will tell you afterwards. But this gets really dark, so if you don't like dark stuff, I would stop. In devastating horror, Stygander cried out against Dusk's desperate hold as his beloved sister Nightingale was ripped apart between 2 Crevice Lake wolves. So that's where it got really dark. That is where Night came to me and said, listen, I'm not sure this makes sense. 1, because Dusk was extremely complacent and kind of a bad parent at the end of the series with Dawn. And I addressed that already with, this is him trying to redeem himself. So my thought is Dusk, at this point, he realizes that no female will take him. He's traveling on the way to Mikhail because he knows he needs help and that more of these pups will die if he doesn't get help. And this is when the attack with the Crevice Lake wolves happened. But Night made another really good point. If Dusk was truly as thin and starving as I have shown him to be in this writing, more pups would have died. He probably would have died. They wouldn't have made it out. So to fix that major plot hole, because it's a big one, I'm going to say that Mikhail and possibly some of his other pups and Kirby, his other older pups, so any of the pups that are old enough but didn't disperse that stayed with the pack, came to save them. So yes, you could say it's a little cliche. It's a little, convenient. But I like to think that they were communicating by howling. I think wolves do communicate by howling. They certainly say, hey, I'm here by howling. And so I like the idea that Dusk had kind of howled in a way to say, I'm in trouble and I'm coming. And that they were communicating back and forth in a way of saying, I'm closer, here I am, also to be able to help Dusk find his way to Mikhail. It's entirely possible that Mikhail could have caught wind of the Crevice Lake wolves close by, and so he decided, I need to go out and make sure I help them get here. And so I like the idea that that's what brought Mikhail and maybe some of the other pack members to help save Dusk from the Crevice Lake wolves. But unfortunately, Nightingale did not make it. So this is what I wrote for Nightingale, being killed by Crevice Lake wolves. Again, there's a reason for that. Yes, I have decided to make Crevice Lake the bad guy. It's just, every story needs to have a bad guy. And even though in the Crevice Lake wolves' mind, they're doing what they need to survive, it's kind of similar to what I have heard about the Shadow Clan of the Warrior Cats series. Again, I have not thoroughly read those books, so this is just things that I have heard from other people. But the Shadow Clan is like the bad clan, and that, you know, they aren't afraid to be aggressive and really fight for their food. But, you know, in all honesty, they're just cats trying to survive out there. And that's essentially what the Crevice Lake wolves are doing. Same as Snagglefang Pack. So, but in our story, Crevice Lake is the Shadow Clan of Yellowstone. Okay, but with that, I will continue. And I'll probably write in where Mikhail comes in to save them. But I'll continue from there. Stygander listened as his grandfather scolded Dusk, blaming him for the death of his mother and 2 siblings, even though the younger male was 1 missed meal away from death. Just to show how much Dusk was starving. I imagine he was extremely emaciated at that point. Too much pain he had witnessed. Too much loss he had suffered. And at just over a year old, Stygander left the Snagglefang Pack borders in hope of finding his place in the world. A free spirit by nature and nurture, Stygander found himself skirting the invisible borders of safety and becoming prey himself. So, in other words, he was about to leave the protective borders of Yellowstone. Wolves do that all the time, and unfortunately, they get killed that way because they just get too far and they're not protected anymore by Yellowstone laws, essentially. So this is what he did. Without understanding the laws of man, the gray wolf walked straight into Metal Jaws, chaining him to the ground of lands far from home. So essentially, he got trapped. He got stuck in a foot trap. Stygander awakes in unrecognizable surroundings, with the sun upon his back and a black collar around his throat. The memories between the chain clutching his leg and where he stands now overlooking the autumn-dusted valley are completely lost. This angers him. Every horrible, brutal, savage event within his very short life has been completely out of his control, morphing him into this hollow shell, a void of darkness left by tragedy. As Stygander snarls at the rubbing leather against his skin, he peers down into the vastness of this valley. This is my life, he thinks in eerie silence, and I control it now. So, essentially what happened was he got caught in a trap. We'll say that heroes, hero humans, saved him from that trap and released him back into Yellowstone with a radio collar. So that way they could track him after he got, he found his way outside of Yellowstone. So that's what we're saying happened with the humans and how he got his collar. Since we all decided he would keep his collar. But now he is filled with darkness. His life has been dark, and he has held a lot of anger. He actually hates Mikhail. He hates his grandfather for how he treated Dusk. And I'm even playing with the idea to play, so not canon yet, but I'm playing with the idea that Dusk will actually leave the Snagglefang Pack because he does not feel worthy of being a father to the pups anymore. But Stygander is going to believe that Mikhail chased him off, which is not what happened. But as a pup, what else would you think, you know? So anyways, that's the story I've written. I know not all of you will like that, but I'm excited about it. You know, I like characters that are driven in tragedy, and I feel like in some ways this is a way of almost making a bad guy, because sometimes following a bad guy is interesting. And so that brings me to the very, very last part of this talk, which is going on way too long. So I'm just going to give a brief mention of it, and then the next Cuppy talk we have, I will delve more into it and another little thing that I've been thinking about. So the future that I have for our WolfQuest series is based off of 3 paths. And we may have wolves take all different paths, and we may follow them down those paths to see where they go. But for Steigander, I'm kind of giving him a predetermined path, and some pups will have a predetermined path. Acer from Charm's litter is going to have a predetermined path, but Steigander in particular is going down the war path. So I have the peace path, the neutral path, and the war path. And so any pups that go down the war path are going to always seek aggression against other packs, but mostly Crevice Lake. And Steigander will particularly hate Crevice Lake. One, because he probably will hear about Aspen and his pups, what happened to Nightingale as well, and the fact that his mother died from Crevice Lake. So he has a great hatred for Crevice Lake. So he will go down the war path. But Acer, for example, he is going to go down the peace path. I'm not going to say why just yet, because I haven't fully written out his bio where I like it. I want it to be as detailed as this. But Acer will go down the peace path. And then other pups may be neutral. And neutral just means that they're either undecided, that they don't care, or they're just kind of living their life the way they want to live it. And they're just like, I don't want to get into this, you know? But they'll constantly be back and forth between, you know, trying to make peace and not. The peace path is really going to be the path that goes down the religion of sorts of Eartha, because Eartha wanted peace, and she believed in one united wolf pack where they were all a family together, a unified pack. That's really where the peace pack comes from. But the war path, we're gonna have that too, because I think it makes it more interesting. If you're playing the same wolf over and over and over again, that's gonna get boring really quickly. And I wouldn't mind getting to play a wolf that's on a peace path and a wolf that's on a war path simultaneously to see what happens, who does better and who doesn't. But we'll get more into that in the next wolf talk, because we're already at 40 minutes on my recording, so that's a little frightening. If any of you have reached this point in the video, I'm proud of you. Like, give yourself a pat on the back, because you've literally just listened to me talk about what my crazy brain has all the time with our wolf story. So yeah, I really appreciate you. I want you to know that. But we'll get more into that, the peace, the war, and the neutral path in the next Cuppy talk, as well as a multiplayer series I'm thinking about starting. And the reason I want to bring that up is because Steigander and some other pups may be marked as a potential multiplayer pup. Not all of them will, but it might be cool, instead of Steigander having his family, is that he goes out with a whole bunch of other wolves that are going down the war path, and we have like a documentary style series where they follow Steigander and these other wolves, or any other wolf down the war path, as they go and take over everything. And so it might be interesting. It also might be interesting to have multiplayer wolves that go down the peace path, and they just have puppies together and they work on spreading their territory in the way that Teo does, where they're spreading the story of Eartha and the unified pack. So more on that later. But I hope you like some of these ideas. I know not everybody's going to agree because we all have our own minds and our own creative ideas. And so I know that some of you might be listening to this like, I wouldn't have done it that way. And that's awesome. I think that's really cool because it makes us different. Anyway, that is all for this Cuppy Talk this week. I really appreciate you guys hanging out here with me. I hope you liked it. If you did, give the like button a tickle and a poke. Don't be afraid to leave your comments in this episode on how you feel about this. If you have any other ideas, suggestions, even if I don't take them, you never know. You might tell me something that I'm like, oh, that's brilliant, and we do it, and then you get to take credit for it because I try very hard to give credit when I get help from others, especially my community, who has helped me so much through this. And even if I can't name you guys by name, I thank all of you because you know who you are, talking to me in the video discussion channel of Discord. I really appreciate you. Anyways, back to my outro. Don't forget to ring the bell because you're going to want to be notified of when more Cuppy Talks come out because I can't guarantee they'll always be on a Saturday. They may be thrown in randomly, so you're definitely going to want to have that bell rung. And then join Discord. Like I said, I talk with my community about this stuff a lot. If you want to put in your say where I look at it every single day, join Discord. I would really appreciate it and love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And then follow me on Twitch because sometimes WolfQuest series may be a Twitch exclusive and you're not going to want to miss that either. I love you guys. Thanks for listening to my ramble of Cuppy Wolf Talks, and hopefully we'll be doing this again soon. So thanks again. I love you. Bye.